Welcome to a new video on my channel. Imagine you're sitting in a job interview. The room is very bright, and the recruiter is looking at you attentively, and you know the next question is coming up soon. It's a question that makes us all sweat a little. Namely, what are your biggest weaknesses? Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I had a friend, let's call him Marcello. Marcello was a great farm consultant, had a lot of knowledge, was eloquent, just a true professional when it came to his job. One day when he was applying for a new position, he found himself in just such an interview. When the dreaded question about his weaknesses was asked, he put on a big smile and said, "I'm a perfectionist." Yes, the recruiter smiled a bit of politeness, but there was a spark of disappointment in his eyes. Marcello realized that he wasn't hearing that answer for the first time, so he decided to be a bit more honest. "You know," Marcello continued, "sometimes I get so lost in the details that I can't see the forest for the trees. But I've learned to remind myself to regularly pause and keep the bigger picture in mind." His honest self-awareness of his weakness, and the fact that he connected it to a learning process, impressed the recruiter. Marcello got the job and is now a valued member of his team. What can we learn from the story? Admitting weaknesses does not mean that we expose ourselves or put ourselves down. It shows rather that we're self-reflective and willing to work on ourselves. It's exactly this quality that makes us better employees and colleagues, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I had a conversation with someone this week, and it was exactly about the topic of weaknesses. What can I say? How do I best express them? That's why I want to give you a little excerpt from my course, the Pharma Consultant course, which is available on Udemy, where the training specifically addresses the question of weaknesses and strengths in job applications. I hope you enjoy this excerpt from the course. Let's move on to the nice questions. Strengths and weaknesses. Yes. Many shy away from the questions. Many start to fumble a bit. But that's also a matter of preparation. You should only mention weaknesses if they aren't really connected to or relevant for the position you're applying for. For example, if a math teacher applies to a high school and says he isn't very good with numbers, that's clearly his weakness. It's an extreme example, but it illustrates the point well, because you should really consider whether to hide that or think about whether you're in the right job. So really take weaknesses. I have a few examples later that you can take and turn into something positive. Right there it says you should choose weaknesses that you can reinterpret. Framing, so you can give it a new context. Examples will follow. Use words. When it comes to weaknesses, you should always use 2 or 3 words to introduce them, so it doesn't come off as something continuous. If I say I always have problems with numbers, then, well, why did you apply here? 2001, that's why there are a few words you can put in front, like sometimes, occasionally, and in some cases, so I only occasionally have problems with numbers. It already sounds different than if I say I always have problems with numbers, or I have. Let's talk about the weaknesses that you can bring up a bit. Everyone probably knows this, and every HR person understands that you can have issues speaking in front of a lot of people. Remember, occasionally, sometimes, you also try to reinterpret the whole thing. You can say, yeah, I occasionally have problems speaking in front of a lot of people. Then I get nervous, but I always prepare well, and that has really helped improve things. Make sure to say that you have problems speaking in front of a lot of people. We are pharmaceutical representatives, and we are applying as pharmaceutical representatives. So reference is already in the word itself. If I have problems just talking to one person, then I would also be out of place. So of course you have to have contact with customers. You should talk to customers. Here it's really about presenting in front of several people. The second weakness could be that sometimes I'm too self-critical. So I have high standards. You shouldn't necessarily back that up completely with an example because it's a weakness, but you should reinterpret it right away. So sometimes I'm really too self-critical. And then you can add that you turn that into having high standards. As a result, things have developed for me over time, so I have very high standards for myself. That was a silly sentence, but you know what I mean. Occasionally, I'm too stubborn in some situations. At first, it really doesn't sound good. But if you think a bit further and can reinterpret the whole thing, you come up with the idea that you have more endurance and persistence. You have more bite. So that's a weakness you can really use in our profession. Even when you're applying for a job, yeah, I can be a bit stubborn sometimes, but that has also helped me achieve my goals better because I have more endurance and I work towards the goal, and then I even exceed my goals. I can be overly cautious sometimes. Does that even fit with our job? Ryan, in this case, makes a connection. If you want to take that as an example, sometimes I'm overly cautious. When I have an appointment, I set a really big time buffer, so that I definitely don't arrive late to the doctor and so that I show up on time. But that has also earned me a reputation with clients for being particularly reliable. That's again a reinterpretation of exactly this pact. Let's talk about strengths. I learn quickly, especially important when you start new at a company.